Yay.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I'm Theo Black,
And I'm Sarah Black.
and here we are today to discuss the bad movies.
I
And
just realized I didn't open the thing that you sent me before we started. I'm not. So when I said I was ready, I was lying.
you're a liar. Well, that's
Okay.
okay. Here, I'll describe. So, the first movie we're going to talk about, and I have a feeling this is going to be rather brief, is Monster a Go Go, which
Okay.
is
Yeah,
from
are you gonna do the synopsis for that
I will
one?
do the synopsis for this one. It is a 1965 sci-fi monster movie type thing, as per our theme. It doesn't matter who's involved with it, really. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't. It's about an astronaut who they threw a pod up, one of those pod things into space. It came back, and the astronaut was missing. And they find the pod, and the helicopter pilot who's found it dies. And the rest of the movie is people trying to figure out what's going on with the monster, and that's it.
You make it sound more active than it really was. It makes me think of like an H.P. Lovecraft story. And what works with the written word does not work on screen, for the record. I have mixed feelings about H.P. Lovecraft's writing, but I think it's Call of Cthulhu, where it's like someone reading a journal and then someone reading newspaper articles and then someone reading a journal again or something.
Yeah,
Like you find out that the helicopter pilot has died via someone talking
radio.
over a radio.
Yeah.
Like you don't really you see the helicopter land and everything looks good, and then he's dead.
Yeah, and the reason I say like, and then the rest of the movie is them trying to deal with the monster, because like a couple things happen, but none of it really matters. Oh, spoilers! Spoilers for this
Oh
movie
yeah,
from
really.
'65, and anything
Yeah.
we may talk about in relation other movies. If you hear the name of a movie, we might be spoiling it.
Yeah.
The
Um
just I
I
mean,
have thoughts on this, but I don't know. I mean, I tend to take over, so.
I have two thoughts, and they're not even really thoughts. They're more facts that I find interesting from Wikipedia. One is Herschel Gordon Lewis, who I've never seen anything from, but I know is famous for being the father of gore or the something of gore or whatever. I think is
Oh, the
uncredited
gore
as
as in GOR gore or as in
Gor,
E?
as in blood and
Okay, because
stuff,
there's a
guts.
whole kinky set of books out there called the Gore books,
Oh,
GOR. So I was a little confused for a moment.
no, the father of like cinematic blood and guts. Like he
Okay,
made, I think it's called the splatter genre, is like something he pioneered, anyways, or not
okay.
pioneered, but is famous for like popularizing. Anyways, he is an uncredited director of this. I think because basically they made this movie, it sat on a shelf, and he bought it and then re-edited it or something. I don't know, but
Okay.
he's connected to it, and I found that vaguely amusing because I've never seen any of it. But for anybody who's a splatter fan, and the other thing is the guy who plays Frank Douglas slash the monster is Henry Height.
Right.
That's not his actual name. I think his actual name does not involve the word height.
They
Marion
spell it
Mullins,
HITE, but yeah.
right? He was a wrestler, and he was billed as 8'2", but he was actually 7'6", which is
He was
still
a
really
mere
tall.
7'6", yes.
Which is like Jesus, so
Yeah.
tall. Anyways, and I found his height amusing, and those are my facts. My actual thoughts of this movie are nothing happens and it's boring. The end. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, we want to explain why. And for one thing, there's a lot of it's narration heavy, and I think that um criticizing all narration is unfair because there's times where I like narration in a movie, but it's this
Yes.
kind of narration that causes people to think because
Yeah.
entire pieces of story are explained, and I think I'll get into the reason why later. Um,
This is a big example of telling and not showing.
yeah, and it's just there's a lot of just kind of watching nothing happening and people talking back and forth, and they don't even do the yelling thing, which like the giant claw has, where it's like they pretend like it's a big conflict because they have people yell at each other, but really it's not very interesting. Like this is just like
Yeah.
it's almost like watching people do a job, like the part where they're towards the end where they're in Chicago and they're like setting up something. Like you're just watching people setting up something, and it's not very
No.
tense. You don't really feel like anything's at stake. It's just kind of dull. But so the
Yeah.
backstory on this that I thought was kind of interesting, and in a way, this was a poor choice of a film, a 1960s film, because it was mostly made in what is it? It was mostly shot in 61. So technically it's a 60s film, but that's close enough to the 50s that to me this felt like a 50s film. And then your guy, Herschel Gordon Lewis, just needed a movie. So he took it and added some stuff, and the end.
Phew.
Bless you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, shoot. I tried to hit the mute button, but I didn't hit it in time.
Yes, I was kind of wondering about that. But so, yeah, so it makes me think just a smidge about, if I'm going to think about anything in relation to this movie, it's that film is a business. All arts are a business, but there's like a barrier to entry with film where you have to have money, you have to make money.
Especially in like the 60s. That barrier is smaller as time goes on.
There's always a barrier to entry with art, but you're gonna, more people can attempt to write a novel than make a movie, even now with cell phones and so on, that you can use to film things. So it's very much a business. And I always think it's interesting. Again, I've been watching these Korean dramas, and some of them are made quicker and more cheaply. Chinese dramas in general have less money behind them. And so they're just going to be different. But it also frustrates, I'm going to go on a slight tangent here. It also frustrates me with like the Olympics, that people are like, this is a real test of who's the strongest. And it's like, I'm sorry, in general, richer countries are going to do better because they have money they can put into it.
Yep.
You know, like Denmark, I remember learning this during the during one of the big World Cups or one of the, I forget the soccer matches, but like Iceland didn't have an indoor field they could practice soccer in until like 10 years ago. So that meant they could only practice for so long because you cannot practice soccer in Iceland year round, just turns out. So there's like, but also, you know, so there's like a financial thing to So you can compare a movie that's made on a little budget to an Avengers film if you want. Maybe you'll get something out of it. I don't know. But it's just a different beast, right?
The way I think of it is, this is all subjective. I think I finally turned you over to the fact that more or less all
you mention this every time.
I get victories, like I get like one victory a year from you, and so I have to mention it multiple.
Still feel so like you still feel like your judgment of things based on the quality of the filmmaking is so much more important than other things sometimes. I think that's why it drives me crazy sometimes.
Well, I overemphasize the quality of the filmmaking as opposed to the
you're like, it's all subjective, but this movie isn't very good because of the camera work. And I'm like, I don't know what to say to you now.
What I'm saying is I don't think it's very good because of the camera work. But here's a part of it. That is about this very argument you and I have constantly. Which is that you can't like film is all subjective. If you approach every film with the same like card that has all the same check boxes on it and has all the 1 through 10s on it,
right?
Like you can't put 2001: A Space Odyssey next to Monster A Go-Go. Obviously, Monster A Go-Go is terrible to me, anyways. But like you still can't really compare them in the sense of like, right. So they use this kind of lens, which means that they got this kind of quality of shot, which means they had a fisheye and, you know, all that stuff.
But it's so even, like, you couldn't even put 2001: A Space Odyssey next to Primer, which is like a genuinely good film, but it's got non-sync audio issues and it was made for... Entirely true. And as I have gotten older, I have loosened my reins on this. It does not change the fact that I like the beautiful films that like Roma and all the stuff that have the beautiful sound and look really good and all that. But I get it. You're right. I sometimes think more about the filmmaking than the storytelling. 1,000 Pieces of Gold is a good movie. I get it. Back to Monster A Go-Go, though. So here's a film that exists because someone needed a double feature. Yes. And I've actually seen this happen. I've known people who make movies because they can get the money to make those movies. And I think Roger Corman operated that way a lot. And you still sometimes get these gems because, using Roger Corman as the example, people who want to make art and want to make good movies will seize this opportunity, and they will be creative and they will make something interesting and wonderful.
Well,
But you
Roger,
also get people who really just want to pocket the money and call it a day, and they put as little effort as possible into it. And I
yeah.
don't know, Horace, it's interesting. Sorry, Herschel Gordon Lewis's other stuff, it sounds like maybe he was more creative at other times, but this really is just like someone needed to fill a double feature, so they made, and I don't have any check boxes for a movie like this. Like, we can look at like Robot Monster, and it was made for nothing, and who knows how passionate anyone involved was about what was happening, but like there's something to it, there's something going on.
Yeah.
Even The Giant Claw like is a movie. This
Yeah.
is barely a movie, and it's just hard to like. There's just a point where you're like, I don't know.
This is it's when
Maybe
you're watching.
I think the actors did care a little bit. Like it feels like that, but like their performances are made of are
Like,
unsupported by the filmmaking, so it's really hard to.
It's that thing where kind of everything is bad. The filmmaking is bad. The acting is bad. The lighting is bad. The choice of what they're doing is bad. The story is bad. The characters are like, all of it is bad as I would judge it. Like, I don't think there's a lot of character. I mean, it's all just long shots. The people are kind of talking to each other as if they're aliens, but not in that fun way that like happens in like a David Lynch movie or something.
Yeah.
Like it's as if they're aliens, as in like they're all just pieces of wood who like have mouths that speak to each other.
Well, I was thinking about just like how much editing, like as an act, I have like a deep sympathy for actors, because I think that like my joke is always that the customer service people of Hollywood, because they're the ones on the screen.
Right.
And some actors are very powerful, but a lot of them aren't. And, you do a performance and then someone can edit it together in a way that makes you look terrible. Like, we could have a casual conversation, and if you add long pauses between everything we say, it starts to sound awkward and strange. And I've seen lots of low budget movies where there's like big pauses. And so the actors start looking like they're just staring at walls,
Yeah, the editor has a lot of control over this.
So who knows with these people?
Well, this film like barely feels like it has an editor too, because again, it's just like wide shots of everything happening, and it's like, okay, you didn't have a lot of film,
and for people, that's like a low budget thing.
Yeah, you didn't have a lot of film. It's expensive.
Film is expensive.
I mean, digital. That's the thing. Once we get to digital, like you digital bad movies, I feel like don't run into that kind of mistake as often, because you don't have to pay for film. So there are plenty of bad movies that are digital, but they're not usually going to have those like, here's one shot of a scene because that's all the film we had for that shot.
I forget who it is. I think it's like Joe Bob Briggs or someone. Isn't he?
The name sounds familiar, but
he's a film critic. I think maybe it was him that talked about expecting to see more good movies based on the barrier to entry lowering, and that it is cheaper to make movies now than it would have been in 61. And really you just get more trash. Because I think it's because people just run around using what they've got without really thinking about it or learning or so on. Anyway, so that ultimately I'm just saying that's the rabbit hole I could go down with this film, is that sometimes film's a business, and some guy just needs another movie and he makes it, and you watch it and there's nothing to it. Like I wonder what either of the directors involved in this, who would be Bill Rebane or Herschel Gordon Lewis, like I wonder what either of them were really, what they would have to say about this film. Like,
this is one of those ones where we haven't done this yet. I haven't, but I want to go back and watch the MST3K for these, because I know that Robot Monster and Monster A Go-Go have an MST3K. I think the Giant Claw does too. I'm not sure about the Incredible Melting Man.
Yeah, some of my least favorite MST3Ks are when they did these 50s movies, because the films are just so boring that it doesn't really matter what they say to me.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I think somewhere in the Wikipedia, it has been at one time quoted that Monster Go-Go was the worst movie they had to watch.
Yeah.
I don't know when that was. If it was while the show was running, if it was while they're doing their riff track stuff now. I don't know, but I kind of need to see if like somebody can make this a funny or entertaining thing, because mostly like at a certain point, you and I mean, we didn't watch it together, but we both texted each other like at a certain point we just stopped watching. Like we watched the whole thing, but like our brains just turned off. It's that thing.
Yeah.
There's that episode of Red Letter Media where Mike's like, my brain is making me forget this in an attempt to protect
Yeah.
itself. Like our
Yeah.
brains stopped watching it in an attempt to protect ourselves. So
Yeah. I don't know. There's just not much here.
there's not much here. I think that's it, guys. That's all we
Yeah, I think
got.
that's it. I
If
mean,
this is
we took it down a tangent. We got briefly mad at each other. We
yeah,
talked
like
about the financial aspects of
we
the
didn't even,
industry.
and the thing is, the interesting part about this was you talking about indie film basically and like low budget, like super micro budget films, because we still haven't really said anything about the movie. It's boring. People walk
There's
around,
nothing to
there's nothing
say.
there.
Occasionally, a very tall man walks on screen, and he's kind of interesting, and that's about it.
That's about it.